7:35, you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. We are everywhere. We're online, we're on the TV, on the radio. Mandy's been in touch this morning. Morning to you, Mandy. About a council house, actually. She remembers sitting on her nan's council house kitchen steps, dipping rhubarb that Grandpa had grown
into a cup of sugar.
Into sugar. Oh, I did that.
I did that too. Isn't that awful for your teeth?
Oh, terrible. Happy memories, though, she says. Also, by the way, that's why I raised it now. She said she was watching GBNEWS yesterday morning, left the house and took you with me in the car.
Oh, well
Great
done.
facility. It's a great thing to do, isn't it? You don't actually have to sort of turn us off, as it were.
No, absolutely. I mean, you can even watch us in Hawaii on Waikiki Beach.
Yes,
as Paul is doing. Yeah, that's right. Hello, very good evening to you. Still, St George's Day. Very proud to be St George's Day today. We're sort of banging the drum for St George.
Yes, we are. We are. Jason says, happy St George's Day to you both. It marks a celebration of the formation of my regiment, the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers. My wife and I will proudly be wearing our red and white roses today whilst raising a glass in celebration.
Excellent, yeah.
Formation of the Fusiliers.
And lots of compliments about your St George's Day tie.
Yes.
Which is really nice too.
I did put it on especially, so there you go. Let's look at some of the papers for you. There's new danger for the PM over Partygate. As a source says, a fine for a second event has been issued. That's in The Guardian for you.
Britain will face holiday chaos for a year, according to The Express. Experts warn of a perfect storm of industry vacancies due to cost-cutting and COVID.
The Independent says consumer confidence has fallen to the lowest level since the depths of the financial crisis 14 years ago, prompting fears of a possible recession.
Quit Man U or die is the stark headline in The Sun. Manchester United defender Harry Maguire has been told to leave the club under a bomb threat.
Let's go through the papers now with journalist Ella Whelan and author of The Patient, Nick Tyrone.
Morning.
To see you both. Ella, we'll start with the dreaded Partygate in The Guardian.
Yeah, I thought I'd pick this just to take you off, Stephen, because I know that you share the same feeling as many people, which I do as well, which is this is just the story that won't go away. And it, the part of the reason that it won't go away is I think it's been characterised as, rather than a question of whether the Prime Minister has done the right thing, acted in the right way, implemented the right policies, it's whether or not he's going to continue to be fined by the police and get these PCNs. So The Guardian reports that he hasn't been given any more since his return from India, but there are suggested that there are some to come, and he has admitted to interviewers who bombarded him with questions while on his trip about Partygate. He's kind of, in this very tired way, saying, yes, I got a pretty good kicking. Someone asked him if he was a cat with 9 lives, and he made a kind of, had to backtrack on a joke about being a cat that got a good kicking. So he knows that he's damaged, or he knows that he's been wounded. The question is, will it be fatal? And The Guardian reports on different ministers and indeed different backbenchers coming out and saying either that this is just water off a duck's back, it'll be fine, or that the elections in May will be something of a test of whether or not the magic of Boris Johnson has been lost. I think for many people there is the sting of the fact that the government quite clearly, and indeed the ministers in number 10 quite clearly followed different rules to the rest of us, and there's that sense of us and them. I think that's the thing that really still annoys people and does annoy me.
They were essential workers, weren't they, in a place of work?
Yes, but it's slightly different, I think, to suggest that if you are implementing rules that say that if you sit on a bench together, or if you go to a funeral together, you'll kill Granny, which was the kind of general sentiment that came out of the government, and then to say, but it was fine for us to make the decision to have a glass of wine. I really don't care about the glass of wine and the cake or whatever it is. Shouldn't be illegal or finable to have a piece of cake. But I think that sense of the public need to be treated like these animals who can't keep it together or make sensible decisions. We can make sensible decisions, and we did. I think that's the thing that really rankles people.
They are running the country.
Yeah, and
at a time of crisis.
But that this has been characterised by a question of whether or not the Prime Prime Minister's going to get a PCN is just, I think that people are bored of that. And whether or not Partygate should be put to the side or not, I think, the reality is it's not. And he's going to have to either come out, and I think what would be great is if he came out and said, not only did I make a mistake with Partygate, I also made a mistake by my policies being far too stringent throughout this particular period of the pandemic. And whether or not you want an apology or a promise that it'll never happen again, I think the latter is more important.
In the meantime, however, Nick, they're turning on the PM in the Telegraph.
Yes, indeed. There's an interview with the backbencher Steve Baker, and this is very damaging because Number 10 have tried as best they can to frame this as this is a Remainer plot. This is revenge for Brexit. And the problem is when you have someone like Steve Baker, who's about as a hardcore Eurosceptic as you can really almost possibly get, saying things like members of the cabinet sitting there fat, dumb and happy and letting me do the dirty work in the trenches rather than take a risk with their own careers. I think what it shows more than anything else is actually this, one of the things about Partygate, it really has filtered through to the general public. And if someone like Steve Baker is actually probably worried about what his constituents think about this enough to address this and say, his quote is, the gig is up in terms of...
I hate to say it, but there's that huge picture of him in the whatever it is, the Telegraph.
The Telegraph, yeah.
Where he looks, it's a great shot. And if you're listening on the radio, you just take my word for it. It's a great shot. Dare I say, it almost looks prime ministerial.
Oh, I was thinking it looked awfully smug.
Well, that could be the same thing.
Well, it could.
Is he basically pitching for a job? I wouldn't be at all surprised if Boris Johnson went, if there was a leadership election, that his name was suddenly miraculously in the ballot.
I think they'll probably, if there is a leadership challenge and Boris Johnson loses, I think that loads of people will put their hat in the ring. And actually, I think one of the fears that certainly the Tory backbench has, is it could be a total free-for-all, and who knows who would get it.
Yeah, I mean, all the press and the media are talking about is sort of Liz Truss or Ben Wallace or something like that. Hardly come up with any more names than that.
But generally speaking, as we look at history, generally it's a dark horse that emerges.
That's one that we haven't even thought of.
Exactly, that's what always happens. It was happened with Cameron. I mean, you could go back. Almost every time there's something like this. I mean, the Boris Johnson, that was an exception, but I think those were exceptional circumstances. I think if there was a leadership contest, we really couldn't predict who would get it.
Are you as cynical as me, Ella, on that?
Perhaps. I mean, a bit of me thinks that Baker has a point in that. You've got Andrew Adonis, people like that, tweeting saying, "This is it, Brexit's over." Once Boris Johnson goes, and so the Democrat in you thinks, oh, I'm going to put all my feelings about Partygate aside because I can't let the kind of outrageous kind of Ramona intent to overrule Brexit, even now, years later, win. So I'm not quite saying that I would back Baker in the Prime Ministerial race because there's lots of problems with him. But if it turns out to be someone like it was no longer going to be Sunak, but if it turns out to be someone from the sort of anti-Brexit camp within the Tory party, I think a lot of us are going to have some problems.
But I mean, don't you think that's sort of naive, particularly on Andrew Adonis's part, this idea? I remember hearing all that.
He doesn't have that.
I remember hearing that from Remainers about Theresa May. Oh, we get rid of her, that'll be the end of Brexit. And you think, well, actually, you'll just get Boris Johnson, and why would the Tory membership are going to vote for someone who is anti-Brexit?
I'm just astounded by, you talk about arrogance and looking arrogant, that picture and smug. I mean, people like Andrew Adonis are saying that now, 6 years after the vote.
But he loves a bit of attention online.
They're just
trying to stir it, though, aren't they, I think? They're just trying to make trouble. They're enjoying it, and actually it shouldn't be enjoyed, this.
No.
For anyone, for Boris Johnson, for anyone in Number 10, for the Tory party, or frankly for the rest of the country. This isn't a game, is it?
No, it isn't. It's a serious issue.
It's a serious issue. We've got a huge cost of living crisis to deal with, and we want a government that will actually address that probably next, don't we? Not just worry about Partygate as it goes on, and as Dean somewhere takes another drink. We've got one of our viewers called Dean who takes a drink every time we mention the P word, which is a bit worrying this time in the morning, isn't it? Ella, tell us about, in the Times, Sajid Javid wants to launch some sort of a investigation into gender treatment.
Yeah, what a thorny issue this is, and Javid is making a move that previous politicians have dared not to, which is to look into the question of an increase in the provision of hormone blockers for children wanting to receive gender reassignment treatment, or children who present at gender clinics and say, or go to their GP and say, I feel that I'm in the wrong body and I want some kind of help to deal with that. I mean, Javid is using quite extreme references. He's comparing it to the Rotherham scandal and saying that this is a failure, that we are failing children. There's people who have talked about it as kind of child abuse. There is a very serious question as to there have been internal investigations and whistleblowing going on within the Tavistock that have said essentially too many children and young people are coming to the clinic, and rather than being given the sort of what was previously understood as the normal medical treatment of not immediately saying, okay, you say you're trans, fine, here are some pills, but being given treatment, having psychological help, counselling, all that kind of stuff, that actually, because of pressure of groups, maybe like Stonewall, but also this external kind of quite ugly debate that's happening often online about whether or not you're transphobic if you ask questions about people's assigned or desired gender, that there's just a lot of clinicians are now feeling like, I don't want the hassle, just give them what they want. And that obviously has some quite dark outcomes. We know that there's lots of young people who end up taking hormone blockers, regretting it, and then you are in this very difficult position where you've done something to your body and it's sort of too late to go back. I just want to point out that Javid needs to recognise that the Conservative Party's policy in trying to use the gender question as a kind of vote winner in relation to introducing the question of self-ID has led to this kind of stuff. Because if you have a policy that says you can just self-ID as a different gender and without any kind of intervention or discussion about it, then it's very hard to say to a clinician, well, you have to say, I don't believe you, to a child that turns up and says, hey, I'm a different gender. So
it's not about saying I don't believe you, though, is it? It's about saying we need to give this, I do believe you, but we just need to give this a couple of years to see how you live in, wear the different clothes, change your name, whatever it is, but just not without any medical intervention.
Yeah, but it's I think it's a bit. I remember interviewing two clinicians who one of them was very high up in the Tavistock, who had whistleblown and then left, who were talking about the fact that it's very important for a clinician to not say I don't believe you in a cruel way, but to say I'm not going to say that you're right. So I'm not going to say yes, you say you're a boy, yes you are, because there's a difference between being kind and affirming what could be someone's mistaken, particularly in the realm of mental health and things like that, someone who thinks that they're solving a problem in their life by using gender when actually it's something else. I mean, I think we need to have more discussion with the experts, particularly in the Tavistock, who are saying there's a problem, who've been saying there's a problem for a very long time, and who are a bit frightened to come out, rather than Javid going in heavy and describing this as something akin to the Rotherham scandal, which was about rape, and is a very different thing.
Yeah, we could talk about it for a long time, but and it's such a huge subject and such a sensitive one as well, but certainly if there has been something that's worth investigating, then they should investigate.
Look at it
definitely
in the right way. Okay, Ella, Nick, thank you both very much indeed.